What's going on, everyone? So let me just invite Mr. Bobo here. So thanks for you. I'll put the link. Oh, Bob just messaged me right now. No one's watching because I didn't even post the link yet, but the recording. So if you listen right from the beginning, um, yeah. So let me post this though. Post all these links. Still can't multitask this. All righty. All right, the tweet's out. All right, now we'll wait for Bobo here. So I hope everyone's doing well. Hopefully, you guys had a nice Wednesday. It's almost Friday, so that is exciting. 2 more days. I love the weekend. Get to read, take all my notes. I have to take notes on the next podcast, which is going to be on the Japanese gold, which is the craziest story. I'll probably end up talking a little bit about it here today, but it's a story that I never heard before, ever. And basically, what happened is World War II, but prior to that, Japan was vicious, dude, vicious. And they, for 100 years, dominated Asia, dominated China, Korea, Manchuria, and they got all the gold. And they got so much gold. And think this is coming off of times when there was no fiat currency, right? Oh, very little. So they got like the estimates, there's still treasure to be dug up and rooms, football size fields underground with booby traps, cyanide bottles, all this stuff. And they still haven't dug it all up, dude. There's like hundreds of sites. And then they had treasure maps. I'm sure we'll end up talking about it today. So I don't know if you heard me talk about it twice, but dude, insane. Trillions of dollars worth of gold. And of course, American banks, they can't let that go. They need that. They need that gold. And so they went in and they, through torture, CIA, all these people, they got the golds. And yeah, dude, just crazy. Oh, look at the. What's up, Jesse? But yeah, so that's my next show. I'm working on those notes. And then it's just such a crazy story, though, dude. And they use that fund to black ops projects, bribe governments. And it's not just the gold. Like they didn't spend it all because they put in Swiss bank accounts or Bahama bank accounts, Caribbean bank accounts, and they accrue interest on this. And we're talking interest in the billions per year of according like with inflation, obviously back then, probably not billions, but millions. But still, think of and this money is off the books. They call it black gold. They set up this thing called the M Fund. And dude, it's just insane. And like the amount of money that the Japanese got, and which was another interesting point too, that, oh, here's Big Bob. We'll talk about it, later. Bob, what's up, dude? Oh, wait, can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you. I'll put the chat up too. I'll plug mine in and out though, see if. I think it's good on my end. I can test it though. Let me do one sec. Let's see. How do I test this? Let me see if I can test the audio settings. Sorry, everyone. One sec. Let me see. Tests. Speaker. Yep. All right. Yeah, I think I'm good here. Once Big Bob but so I was saying it was all the gold, and they use that for God knows what. So much interest, so much power is coming off of this hidden gold that they didn't tell anybody about. So you can just imagine the amount of power that leads. and just sickening. So that's like the next show. But it's just, I've never heard that story before about how much wealth these Japanese people stole from all the Asian countries that they wreaked havoc on.
Check 1 2.
Oh, nice. Gotcha.
Yeah. Hey, let me get a drink real quick. Keep talking.
Yeah, go for it, dude.
Stall,
go for
baby.
it.
Stall.
So yeah. So what else? I'm trying to think about all the other big points of the show before we get into it. Nixon knew about it. And that's what I was saying was, like, Nazis, everyone's like, oh, the Nazis were worse. But in World War II, Japan was far more brutal than the Nazis were. What's up,
Hey,
dude?
real quick, did you put the link up on Twitter so I can share it with everybody?
I just put it up. Yeah.
All
I think
right,
I tagged you. But I know you got a lot of numbers on your notifications, Bobo. So if you need
I think the number right now is 3, so I think we're okay. All right, let me retweet this.
Yeah, and I'll hit live for the podcast, like to record. Let me just get it up.
Ooh,
well,
recording. It's official now.
If you didn't know,
now it's on record.
So, like I said in my tweet, I got the professional now.
Wow.
Stepping down to be on the show, the one and the only Bob's Lessons. Bob.
How you doing, man? So good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. How's it feel to be in the little leagues again?
I don't know about that, man. I consider you the big. I judge it based on how well informed you are, and you are the major league of preparation.
Oh, thank you, dude. So how's the new job going?
Job's going well. As you know, the hours are brutal. I got to wake up at 3:45 in the morning. So when you texted me earlier, I was 3:45 a.m.
Damn,
so
dude.
that's bright and early.
Way early.
I'll be honest, it's in that ambiguous hour between is it still the night before or, like for example, sometimes I'll go into a gas station at 3:45 in the morning and the cashier will say, have a good night, rather than have a good morning.
Wow. Dude.
So it's kind of that ambiguous time frame. And then you get done with work and it's 9:30 a.m. So I took a nice little power nap today. And I'm feeling good right now, man.
What time will you go to sleep?
So here's my normal schedule: 3:45 a.m. work till about 9:30. Take a power nap, go back up to work, and then fall asleep about 11. Repeat the process.
So you got to prepare for like the next day.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's usually like a show prep or like anytime you're in and this, anytime you're in media, there's a lot of editing involved. So we'll re-air certain segments that we like, kind of package it in and then re-air it later that afternoon. So,
but those are all skills you had though because you're pretty good at editing and all those.
Yeah, I would say, I had those skills. So, it was good that, I'd already been doing this for a long time. So the learning curve was a lot quicker, but, terrestrial radio, FM radio is a totally different ballgame. Like what we're doing right now, which is this long form conversation, it's totally different. We are, everything's divided into short segments. So we have between 8 to 12 minutes to get our point across. So let's say we're covering a topic like removal of troops from Afghanistan. I've got basically about a minute to a minute and a half to, give my opinion on Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Whereas in this long form debate, we can kind of chop it up back and forth a little bit longer. So I just had to get used to the tempo of it because I'm very long winded when I speak. So
but you're very articulate. So that would be difficult. It's definitely a change up from what you're used to.
Yeah. How's everything going in your world?
Dude, I can't complain. It's still, it's going great. It's going great, dude. It's going great. Summer's almost over though. That's the only sad part. We'll get colder up here, but
I've been in Pennsylvania, especially up in the Poconos during those long cold winters, and that is a different type of cold up there, my friend.
Yeah, dude. And I can walk to work, so I wear flip flops, and soon it's gonna be like the fur slippers that I.
Are you a flip flop in the winter kind of guy? Because I know some people that don't change. Yeah, you don't do that.
I can't do that because it's just too cold, dude. But I would if I just hate putting on socks. I'm like old. I mean, we're both, and it's hard to bend down.
It's funny you say it. Why? I don't know. I'm the same way. I've always hated wearing socks. So what I'll do is I'll buy a bunch of knowing that like within 3 to 4 months they're gonna be unusable.
Just and then
Yeah, they're just rancid, and then I just rinse and repeat, and just so I try to buy cheap shoes. I hate socks. I always
Yeah.
have.
Ugh. Tight
I don't
socks are
know.
the worst, dude. They're the
Yeah,
worst.
so I'm with you on that, man. I actually for a while I was big into barefoot on the ground when I
Oh,
walked and
you're
stuff.
like a hobbit.
Yeah, I'm like one of those guys. I like having connection to the earth. So
Well,
strange
so
cat, man.
hey, dude, it's not, you got tough feet. That's a solid, solid avenue. But
Well, that was part of it too. That was part of it too. Is like, I want to, I got soft ass feet. Every time I touch a rock, it hurts. So I wanted to kind of build calluses up at the bottom of my feet, similar to my hands when I play an instrument. My
right.
hands have gotten very coarse and, a lot of scar tissue is built up because of that. So I thought I would apply it to my weak ass feet.
Hey, dude, if it's weak, you train it, and now you're good.
Just like a muscle, you know about that.
That's right, dude. Well,
So
so
what do we got today, man? What's on the
saved,
menu?
so I'm trying this new format, so
Okay.
videos, but I obviously Afghanistan is on everybody's mind. I saved the
Sure.
one thing that I wanted your opinion on. I gotta find where I bookmarked it, but basically, I like since the days of everything's a movie and all that stuff, I've like kind of drifted away from that. But there was one person that posted a video of like well, I guess what's your take on what's going on in Afghanistan?
Well, my take is I always, one, follow the money, and two, what is the mainstream media? How are they reporting on it?
Right.
Like that's always my take. If they're giving it round the clock coverage, then that's immediate red flag for me that whatever's going on, it's generally the opposite of what's happening. I'm very interested as to why even the leftist mainstream media is basically leaving Biden out to dry. I mean, obviously this is his issue, right? But why is it that they're giving it round the clock coverage and actually going after Joe Biden for once, which never happens? So those are the questions I'm asking. A lot of people have made the reference to the point that this is where they're going to install Kamala, so there's theories going around that, because he's made mention before that, if him and Kamala ever disagreed on foreign policy, he would fake a sickness.
Isn't that such the crazy, what did that mean, dude? What did that mean?
To this day, I don't know, but, this isn't a new thing. Even before 9/11, we've been heavily involved in Afghanistan during Jimmy Carter, even up until the early 90s. We, in my opinion, indirectly created the Taliban. We funded, the Mujahideen in the past.
Nice pronunciation, dude.
Did I get that right?
I think so. It sounded good to me.
It's close enough.
Yeah, very close. But yeah.
Yeah. So we've been involved in this proxy war for a long time. Basically, the Afghanistan is used as a proxy war between, the Soviets and the British, and really the Soviets and us too during the Cold War. So, and here's the thing about the Taliban is they don't know anything else except war. They were born into the early 90s, and even in 1992, our removal caused a lot of chaos. So, I mean, we should have been able to learn from history if we care at all about history, about what happens when we, have a swift removal. But my opinion is nothing ever happens by accident, Jack.
Yeah.
I think if they wanted to make Joe Biden look bad, then this is the way to do it. If they want to hang him out to dry, this is the way they do it. If they want to install a new regime, this is a way to do it. And I know you mentioned George Soros, doing a 180 about how he feels about China, and maybe they're looking for a regime change there as well. But if you follow George Soros, you follow his investments, and he was and I know he recently took out a lot of his investments in China. So a lot of weird stuff happening, dude. Man.
I didn't know that. I didn't hear that part.
What's your take on everything?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we funded all those people every time. I mean, I favored this one, like how a 700,000 contract for gym equipment in Afghanistan. But so I don't, like, I'm at your point too, where it's like, I don't know. There's so few things organic. Like, they had to know this was going to happen. They had to know, dude. There's no way they didn't. There was no fight at all. And
the other thing that's weird about, as I watched this video of, it looks like the Taliban on a Segway.
On an elliptical, yeah.
Elliptical machine. Yeah. Oh man, they're using horrible form, by the way. See, this is
They've
probably
never
why
seen
that
it.
this is probably why they fell so quickly. Is nobody trained them how to do a proper curl, you know. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, listen, with the amount of intelligence that they've built up over the decades that we've been in Afghanistan, in and out of Afghanistan, that there's no way that this was an accident. So my question is, what's the play? You know, what's the play here? And whether it's in, and people are like, oh, we should invoke the 25th Amendment, get Biden out of there. And I'm like, for who? For Kamala Harris, who's like way more Marxist?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the end game here? So, it's
it's interesting too that like the conservatives are also like both sides, like it's people even on the left, they're like, we have to go back. We have to go back. Like, it's amazing. Like even if it was everything happened exactly as it happened, regular people now are feeling horrible and I feel bad for those people too, if all these things changes are supposedly happen. But it's amazing. Like now we have people that probably were anti-war into supporting going back. Don't you think? Well, like I see that.
That is, to me, and I'm glad you said that, the most logical thing, which is, a quick removal and then blast it all over the place shows, hey, well, this is what happens when we extract, when we take the troops out. Now, there were ways to get out of there in a calculated measure to avoid this that were ignored. And listen, like I said, I don't think any of this is done by accident. So maybe the optics are, this is what happens when we leave Afghanistan. Let's go back there for another 20 years. What would be their reason for staying in Afghanistan? Well, there are many reasons. If you follow the money, we know Afghanistan is extremely mineral rich, right? So that's the number one thing. Trillions and trillions of dollars in minerals that go into your cell phones and whatever. Afghanistan, is a place where, oil pipelines go through. So you have oil. Those are the two main things that I think about. And everything kind of falls into place when you follow the money. And that's kind of where I was going at that. So I'm glad you brought up the point about, both sides are kind of saying, hey, we shouldn't have gotten out of there. We need to go back now.
I don't know how to word this joke. I tried it on my fiance, but do you know there's a fighting season in Afghanistan?
What like a hunting season?
Dude. And I didn't know what that meant. I heard Joe Biden say in that like 8-minute speech he has, and the fighting season is from October to April, or I guess April to October, and they don't fight really in the other months. They only fight in those months. And some of the reasons are like weather. I guess it snows in Afghanistan, which I didn't really know. But yeah, there's a fighting season, and every time during the April to October, it like shoots up, and then it'll decrease for, until.
Well, hey, so what if you fight like outside that time frame? You're poaching.
I don't know, right, dude? Seriously, but I was trying to think of how can I word this joke, but I just thought that was. I've never heard that.
That's the joke in itself, that they've seasonal fighting, But hey, weather's the best police, and weather's the best peacemaker too. So, but it didn't stop them in Vietnam because, you saw a lot of, I'm trying to remember the condition that a lot of the soldiers were getting when they were like swamp foot kind of deal, but they were having to fight in extreme weather too. So that's interesting that they actually have a fighting season.
Yeah, dude. And Biden said that in his speech. So I was like, I wanted to see who else had a fighting season, but I just found that like wild. And also it's like something to do with Pakistan because they get, they can't get into Pakistan because it's all by foot or like walking and supplies and stuff like that. But I also think it's crazy too. Like, I'm not siding with like the Taliban's beliefs, but it's like a crazy dichotomy of what we have. Like, it's like there is no middle, like of degeneracy wise. And like, you either have Cardi B on kids shows, wearing scantily cladded clothing, or you have and I think they love putting it at extremes, but I just found that's like also an interesting, I think it's also why it gets a lot of hate. I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah. And you had a great, you posted a great picture that I shared, which was basically like every type of group possible attacks Christianity too. Yeah. And on the extreme nature of it, if you look at how Christianity is portrayed in film, they're always portrayed as the crazies.
Right.
I feel like everything has been attacking it, whether it's the mainstream media, pop culture, even the ADL and everything goes after Christianity. So you have that as well. But yeah, I always get, especially when you've read in the past that, 3-letter agencies have funded a lot of the propaganda and staged a lot of these events and staged some of the like put green screens in the background, all that shit. It's hard to tell what's real, especially when you watch these videos and there isn't a single woman or a child in the
Oh
video.
yeah, that's a good
You know,
point. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even this video of the Afghani civilians, attaching themselves to a U.S. Plane.
Yeah.
That video kind of scared me, but I'm
Yeah.
just always curious as to how this stuff gets leaked out and what the mainstream media chooses to show as their imagery, because they're really good at one using language to promote fear, and they're also really good at packaging their video and their imagery in order to get what they want.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that wag the dog theory, like the movie Wag the Dog, like where they just basically created a fake war to distract away from a sex, a presidential sex scandal. So what's the wag the dog here? What's the distraction and what's the motivation?
Well, that was what I was trying to bring up, was that how some people I saw like are putting that they think it's a green screen with the
Mm-hmm.
plane. And I don't know if I like would go that far. Like they showed all those photos comparisons, but you're right though. Like how do they choose what they put on? It's definitely to
Right.
put out a think. I mean, everyone that watches that is all, even like my unpolitical affiliated fiance felt like, oh my God, like these poor people.
Right.
But
So,
yeah,
I mean, that's what they're and that could also say, like, look, when they show that image, and listen, I'm not saying I don't think it's like a green screen. I'm just wondering why they chose, you know, why, they, what they'll do is they'll take one clip and they'll play it over and over and over and over and over
over,
again.
yes.
So what's the reasoning for that? The emotion is, oh my gosh, we need to go back over there and protect all these people. So what does that mean now that, now are they going to reverse course and say we need to go back over there for another 20 years and mine them for minerals? Hey, and let's not ignore this too. You know, where does the number one world supplier of opium come from?
Mm,
And that is something that nobody talks about. Like,
you're
where
right.
did all this opium come from? Post 9/11, there was heroin came back. It was a big, epidemic.
Yeah, it
And
was.
so those are cash crops as well. I'm not
Yeah.
saying the government was involved, but I know, and I know I keep using movies, but I use movies as references because I feel like they hide partial truths in movies. American Gangster. That's what the whole plot of American Gangster
Right. Yeah. In
was.
Vietnam.
Using coffins of U.S. troops to smuggle heroin into the United States. So, these are all things, motivating factors to stay in Afghanistan. Because, even we always talk about the 3-letter agencies using that drug money to fund black op projects.
Well, so I brought this up. I can't find it yet, but so like we know that heroin, that fuels so much stuff, and the CIA is always involved in that. But I was thinking like, okay, so because the Taliban claims they're going to stop the heroin, like that's going to stop. And so if that would actually happen, I was thinking fentanyl comes mostly from China. Is fentanyl or opiate or poppy plants needed to manufacture fentanyl? And I don't think they are, because it's a synthetic. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like oxycodone comes from, you need opium. So I wonder like if they're like, okay, well, we got, like, now our big pharma backers don't need this anymore. It all comes from China anyway, so we can stop outsourcing it to Afghanistan. You know what I mean?
I mean, that it seems like a logical solution if everything is about follow the money. Even the old jab, that we're having to deal with here is about following the money. I mean, you can't, in regards to pharmaceuticals, you can't really you can't sell the sun, meaning like, if I go outside and get sunlight as my source of vitamin D3, like I can't get a prescription for sunlight. And that's why a lot of these vitamins aren't covered by big pharma, is
Right.
because a lot of these are naturally occurring. So
Yeah.
anything that's naturally occurring, they try to not push. Anything they can control, they do try to push. And so it's a what have you done for me lately kind of world. So with regard to Afghanistan, if there's no need for it, then they'll reverse course. Same thing with Soros. If there's a different need, or his needs were met, and he's taken his investments out, and then all of a sudden, whoa, he did a 180 as far as how he feels about China. Now all of a sudden, China is the most dangerous nation in the world. So what's the, and I'm reading this article right now. It says Soros, just has a timely exit of a lot of his Chinese investments, and that was 2 days ago. So he's backing out of a lot of his investments, and all of a sudden he's reversing course. So when, like you were saying, follow the money, and then everything else just kind of falls into place.
Well, I saw somebody in the comments talk about gold, and I saw that the president of Afghanistan, he left with like $160 million in gold bars. And this is going to be I was talking about before you came on, but and it kind of deals with China, but in Japan back in World War II, for 100 years, they wreaked havoc on Asia, dominated, and they were ruthless, dude, like ruthless. Take your wife and put her into prostitution, behead you. But they accumulated gold from all these countries that these people stored their wealth in gold, platinum, diamonds, and they hid it in booby trap tunnels all over Asia, predominantly Philippines. But and we find it eventually. We torture the CIA, sends this one guy named Lansdale who's involved in other stuff, but they tortured this guy who was like the driver, and then they would booby trap these holes, dude, like football fields big of underground tunnels with different directions with cyanide bottles. And we get it. And it's trillions of dollars of gold. And they use that to fund everything that they don't want on the books. And the interest it accrues every year is in the billions. And it's called the M Fund. I don't know how I was tying that to, I guess I was loosely tying that to the president, but yeah.
Well, I mean, we've talked about that realistically involving just about anything. Like even when we go back to 9/11, there were gold reserves that, and there was trillions of dollars missing from the Pentagon. So all that makes sense. So, I mean, here's the deal. And this is something that people bring up all the time. If we're so interested in being the world police or the savior and instilling democracy and peace across the world, why don't we have like a larger presence all over Africa? I mean, we do, but not to the extent that we've been in Afghanistan for gosh, seemingly really off and on for 5 decades now.
Yeah.
Why don't we hear about any of the humanitarian efforts in Africa? Well, we don't have much invested in there. If there was trillions of dollars in underground bunkers, you don't think that, in Zimbabwe, you don't think that they would create some kind of conflict in Zimbabwe to go in there?
Yeah, you're absolutely. I wonder so this is what I've been like struggling with this. Like I keep flip back and forth of like, is this fake conflict between China and America? Is it like the same group at the top? But we see like how China's involved heavily in Africa. Do you think that could be, if I'm trying to word this the right way, like, so do you think that maybe China is another superpower that controls Africa and that's why we're out of Africa? Or do you think it's just all a show?
It's like, it almost seems like, just like with like language and culture, like you can also tell the power of a country based on language. So like languages actually become extinct too. And so you're noticing that English, like Mandarin, French, Spanish, like these are some of the languages that are still very powerful, Portuguese. And so to answer your question, if you look at like the study of languages, then you can kind of tell how the power structure is. And I know this sounds weird, oddly enough, I feel like US and China kind of need each other, even though they will never admit it. Just kind of like Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson need each other. Like they drive the price up of each, like each kind of profits off of the other. So if Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson are on the 18th tee at Augusta, all eyes are going to be on them. Everybody benefits from their rivalry, so like competition, breeds that type of investment. So, yeah, I think the U.S. and China, I don't think it's a fake conflict. I think it's very real. But, I don't think they're, secretly shaking hands behind closed doors. But at the same time, I know that, the two need each other, if that makes sense.
No, I think you're absolutely, that's where I like kind of lean, because like we've done this forever. We did it in Russia. We propped up Russia in we funded the Bolshevik Revolution, but we got Russia at start. Same while we're arming us up. But China is like I was also reading like another book that I found this so wild, like Sun Tzu. Have you ever read I haven't, but
like The Art of War?
Right. So like one of his, I'm butchering it, but it's like the best battle fought is one that doesn't require force. And basically like for all of it, they're like big on the spies and big on infiltration and just humiliating your opponent before you ever have to fight them. And we see that stuff clearly going on here everywhere, right?
Yeah, that's the new strategy. Before it was, eliminate the enemy, kill as many people as possible. But then they realized, well, I don't know if that's the most effective way, because, when you kill an idea, that seems to be the most effective way. The only problem is it's a slower process. But if you do it the right way, like you were saying, and this is what is so scary, is that you're starting to see a lot of the Chinese practices and philosophies spill into the United States, and it's happening so secretively, like with the tech purge, and even things like when you put the word jab or the V word on a image, and the algorithms redirect you, or I've even had it now where I've made a comment and it immediately censors it, or I put a YouTube video up and it immediately censors it. All these videos are popping up. These are all things that the Chinese, mastered, when they're censoring their people. And here's the other thing: even before coronavirus, if you think of one group of people that voluntarily would wear masks openly in public, it was the Chinese. And which country is the most hermetic and the most suppressive of information as far as like well-developed country? It's the Chinese, which is why the masks to me are extremely symbolic of a literal muzzle. And so now we're seeing people getting so accustomed to wearing masks here that I'm telling you, even if COVID goes away, you're going to start seeing people wearing them voluntarily.
Yeah, dude. And I just thought, because that's a great point, because also this new like reveration for politicians, like you defending them on Twitter or attacking either or. It's kind of like, I imagine that's the same type of belief in probably China, where they maybe they fake view them as that, but they love, kind of just like that North Korean crying when they're walking in the street. I'm sure it's not that prominent, but that's definitely where we're going.
It's kabuki theater, and I'm trying to remember the name of the guest you had on that, and I was really intrigued when he was talking about how in some ways China actually has more freedom of speech than the United States does. He basically said the one thing you can't do. The funny thing is, he was like, the one thing you can't do is criticize the government. They'll literally kill you. Yeah. And I was like, oh well, okay.
Yeah. But I think in that sense, like, dude, what they did to those. Shout out to the one guy. I don't know if the one guy that was in the podcast who got they kicked down his door 6 months later for being there January 6th. Luckily he's okay. But like, dude, I mean, that whole event was so insane that they did that. So I hate when like boomers are like, my freedom, all that stuff. It's like, dude, we are no better. Like, maybe we're just different things you can't criticize.
Right. No, and that's the scary thing and the other thing that, and I beat this like a dead horse, but I need people to kind of make sure that they internalize this. If you want to see how free a society is, you look to comedy. And the reason why is because comedy checks the pulse of what is taboo, what is allowed to be said in culture, and what isn't. And so when you're seeing a lot of woke comedians out there making a name for themselves, but then you're seeing comedy clubs saying stuff like, hey, we don't encourage racial humor, sexist humor, this type of humor. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, did you listen to Richard Pryor and George Carlin in the 70s and 80s? Did you listen to Eddie Murphy? Did you listen to Bill Hicks? All these guys. It's like, man, if you just look at the way comedy has I should bottlenecked, I guess is the word. Over the last 40 years, you start to say, man, our freedoms are really starting to, we're slowly losing our freedoms right now, where now we have woke comedians, and the ones that aren't quote unquote woke are getting kicked out of comedy. I didn't realize that there was such thing as a racist joke. I figured like you kind of just make fun of everybody, you self-deprecate and you just kind of listen, we're all in this together and we can all laugh at each other. We have to be able to laugh at each other. And that's the scary thing is comedians now can be fined for a joke. Imagine that. You can get kicked off of television for a joke. You can get fined in Canada for a joke. You can get killed in certain countries for a joke or a comedy newspaper or satire. Satire newspapers have been fact checked. So that is why my big fight is making sure that PC culture dies, that we get rid of it. PC culture is the biggest threat and the biggest enemy. It's bigger than a gun. It's more powerful than a weapon.
It's like, I mean, that's why all of us can't use our real names on the internet, because any belief you have, they'll call your work or worse. I mean, and it's insane, dude. It's literally, and it's terrifying because you never know, as you've lived it firsthand, that just people calling your work, trying to ruin your life over something you said that can only be like, if it's squished, it's hurtful or whatever, hurt their feelings.
Well, that's crazy. The thing. It's like, does your right to be offended trump my right to, express my opinion? It's like, if we worry about offending, and this goes back to comedy too, and the great Patrice O'Neill said this, is comedy is meant to make half the people laugh and the other half of people feel like uncomfortable and disgusted.
Wow, that's a good quote.
Like if you live your life like, oh man, anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, I need to get rid of it, then you're living in like a bubble that I would never want to be a part of. Everybody that's listening here and everybody that, follows your podcast and my stuff, we've all had a reality check. And at some point we've all, had to like swallow a hard pill and been put in an uncomfortable situation. Once you get past that, then, realistically, like your mind's open to just about anything. And it's very hard to be offended.
This brings me up to like the next thing I want. My mom was a teacher. I remember you said on a few, your mom was like is an educator. Mm-hmm. It's like the way the school system is going. And this is just bringing to light the issues of federally mandated or oversaw anything. But I keep, you see that the libs of TikTok thing, and that's also scary, that what these people's political beliefs and are coming into every avenue that we have. And
yes, and
like, what do you do?
So here's the thing that's scary about it is, and this, I see this a lot with like revisionist history. So what they do is they'll, this is private and public schools, they'll outsource curriculum like, like history, and they'll train their teachers based on this revisionist history, curriculum, and then instill it in the schools. And I'm seeing it in a lot of the private school systems here in Memphis, Tennessee. The thing is, the thing that really bothers me is that, and I've said this for both ways, as a teacher, you should never let your students know your political affiliation. That's the number one thing. And now these are turning, and they have been for a long time, but it's getting even worse. They're turning into indoctrination camps. Mm-hmm. And the teachers are becoming more powerful in a sense that they are becoming more open about their radical, and I'm going to say this, radical leftist ideologies. I mean, putting a Black Lives Matter flag into a classroom to me is no different than putting like a rebel flag. In my opinion, it's probably worse,
right?
Because at least like with the rebel flag or the Confederate flag, there's a historical significance that can be talked about yet. Yeah. Like BLM at this point is, it's a slush fund for the Democratic Party,
right?
But there's no self-awareness with a lot of these teachers. And so they think that they are doing good. They think when they instruct their third grade class to walk out, for they'll have school-wide walkouts for either gun control or for social justice. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what is social justice? What is this word that you're talking about? Like, is social justice like justice that you agree with? Like, what about my social justice?
Yeah.
Like, my social justice is different than yours. Can we do a walkout to protect gun rights?
Dude,
Can we do a walkout to protect, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome? Can we do a walkout for free market economies? Can we do a walkout, you see what I'm saying? For the nuclear family, can we do a walkout for Christianity?
And it's anything that doesn't support like those things that make us strong, a strong family. It's all these opposite, which I find like very interesting because there's something that's pushing this narrative out, as we all know. But that's how I know there's even these people, they, like you said, they think they're doing the right thing by teaching these kids this, but they don't, because they follow social media and are indoctrinated. And it's so powerful too. Like if you control that next generation, as we've seen, it just is going to keep growing and ballooning, and it'll keep moving that paradigm over and over and over. Before you know it, I don't even want to guess where it'll go.
And I don't mean this in a demeaning way. I'm just speaking realistically. And this is something that was echoed by Jordan Peterson, is that unless the elementary school system is extremely maternal, in some ways as well as it should be. Yeah. And when I was a teacher, I was one of 3 male teachers in the entire elementary school. And so I saw firsthand that, one, I had a lot of children that didn't have father figures in the house, which is a whole nother issue that needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
And 2, there's not enough male influence in elementary school systems, so it's extremely maternal. Jordan Peterson said this, not me. Females are much more susceptible to, I'm trying to get it the proper term. Even like mind control with MK Ultra, 80% of their, their, I guess you could say sample size was with women. And so 80% of marketing is directed at women. And so when you see that, a lot of the propaganda is directed purposefully at women. And I'm not saying that women are weaker. What I'm saying is the propaganda is directed specifically to target women based on scientific research that they've seen. So what happens is you have propaganda specifically designed to subvert women, who will then go into the classroom and teach these same principles to men. And that's why you're seeing a lot of, ultra feminized normalization of men. And it's not a sexist thing to say, when it's backed by science. Trust the science. I'm not being, a toxic masculine advocate or anti-woman by saying this. What I'm saying is this is things I've noticed, and scientific research backs this up. Well, so that being, what were you saying?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go.
No, it's fine. So, when they know this and they design the propaganda to target women, and they're targeting women is what I'm saying. I'm saying women are being victims of this subversion. Okay. I'm not saying they're actively seeking it out. I'm saying they are victims of this subversion. Yeah. That's why you're seeing so much indoctrination, because people are like, why is it that all of these teachers are far left leaning? And it's by design. It's not by accident. They come out of these institutions well equipped with Marxist, ideologies, and then they go back into the school systems. Because why? A lot of teachers go back into the school systems, maybe because they might end up raising a child themselves, one day. There's so many reasons why women get involved in education. Listen, it's the most maternal job there is, right? Caretaking over, a whole classroom of children that realistically become their children. They're way more emotionally invested in these young children than a male teacher ever could be. The male strategies of teaching are completely different. I can tell you from personal example. But
even, with this point of like Rockefeller Foundation, they were the first funders of the first wave or second wave of feminism.
Right.
And I know anytime that a group like that gets behind it's not because they want the best for you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. When they do all this research especially like the Freudian style of advertising. And they start advertising based on emotion, not like I have product A, it can do A, B, and C for you. This is why you need the product. No, I have product A and it can make you feel sexy, right? So without this product, you don't feel sexy. And so you see a lot of advertising being drawn towards women because they feed off of, a lot of the insecurities that women have, which is really, it's sad to see when you see like a beautiful woman that's never happy with the way she looks when she looks in the mirror, and she's always chasing, the next thing that's going to make them look more physically attractive. The same thing happens with ideologies, is they sell the sexiness of it and they package it. So like, for example, who doesn't care about Black lives? So let's call it Black Lives Matter. So what, you don't care about Black lives if you don't support BLM? Like all the wording of this shit is extremely calculated.
I mean, yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, that's even ties to like social media being a virus to females specifically, but and males too. It's just, it puts these ideas and thoughts in people's heads. I think it's brought way more negatives than positives. It's almost like as bad as plastic. It just infect, like my boss, his kid's 9 and has TikTok. There's no way.
Yeah.
He doesn't come
across. That scares me, man.
Right? Like what, God knows what he comes across. Like I'm sure there's many videos of scantily clad women. Like if there's no way that is going to be he's not like learning, science, whatever.
Here's the other thing that freaked me out. I signed on to Instagram a while back, and it's like you go into your search and it's like young girls dancing. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, why is this in my search? Like, what do they think I am? And so like I had to like research, like, how did I get this crap, off my search feed? Or like I even downloaded TikTok one time, and the first thing when I'm scrolling the videos is like young girls dancing on camera. I'm like, dude, I got to get this off my phone, man. I can't have this crap all over my phone. But it's scary to see how like not only is it very rampant with young girls, but it's like being encouraged and pushed in front of your face. That's the real scary thing.
And like I'm sure if you pulled America, you can tell is like in that decadence, maybe like already down because like think China or India, doctor, lawyer, or whatever, scientist, and here it's like I want to be a TikTok influencer or whatever, whatever, totally just surface level skill that you want. There is no, and like that also worries me for when we're like we're adults now, but when we're older, what are younger generations, where do you get the people? And I think that's also why we keep letting so many people in, because at this point we're not replacing ourselves. We're getting stupider. Education is getting more, what's the word they use? Not equal. Equity, yeah, right. And
so it's becoming more, there's a merge of activism and education. They're merging activism and sports, they're merging activism and education, and it's less about facts, truth, and as well as like the essentials, like math, arithmetic, and it's becoming more about leftist activism. And we referenced the Taliban earlier. Like imagine being born into a war-torn country and you don't know anything different. Imagine being born in a cage as a rat and the only thing you know is that cage. Well, these children are being born into this society of immediate clicks, immediate likes, immediacy, upgrade. And they're not going to understand what the analog life is, or life, when you turn the Wi-Fi off is. And I think I made this analogy, like remember back in the 90s where you would have like one computer class a day where you would go into the computer lab for 50 minutes. There's going to come a day in which you're going to have a class, except it's going to be the exact opposite, where you're going to have 50 minutes a day where you sit face to face with somebody and you got to teach people how to talk to each other face to face.
I bet you're absolutely right. The other topic I wanted to hit on was the infrastructure bill. And so let me real quick, like, I think, we're already in so much debt, and we all know that the roads and those things need to be improved, but none of that money will get there. And it's just leading us down this So what happens? I mean, I think the infrastructure bill, I know it's just for roads and things, but I think it's like an overarching topic that we're clearly just throwing money. We're clearly we're already at inflation.
Right.
What's your take on what happens from this?
We had this CBS guy on our show one time, and he was comparing Biden's infrastructure bill to FDR's The New Deal. And I had to stop him. I was like, did you just compare this bill to FDR's New Deal? And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, listen, you put the term infrastructure on this bill, then everybody's like, well, I like infra. It's the same thing like with Black Lives Matter. Like, well, I care about Black
I like
lives.
infrastructure.
Yeah, I like infrastructure. Who doesn't like good infrastructure? So you put a good word on it and say it's an infrastructure bill, and then you and then you look at the numbers and you're like, how many $1 trillion on infrastructure? And then you're like, how much is actually spent on roads and highways and bridges in this bill? And then you start to realize that it's a 2,500 some odd page document. And then you're like, okay, who actually reads this crap? And what's hidden in the fine print that we don't know about? Like $250 million spent on invasive plant species removal program. They're hiding on page like 2,000, like 50 million on studies on how to tax us, on per mile fees, so these are the types of things that get hidden in these infrastructure. And on top of that, it's like all the pork barrel that gets thrown in there for everybody so they can get reelected and say, come back to their constituents and say, hey, I did this. And, you start to say the one thing that always gets passed through, bipartisan is more and more spending. So, yes, it seems like that the inflation that you were speaking about is inevitable. But if you're asking me if I think this is a legit infrastructure bill or if it's going to be any way beneficial, absolutely not. I think my stance on that.
Yeah, I'm thinking like this is just, I mean, we already have the precedent set. We don't even know how much money is printed by the Fed at all. It's just what they report. Like this one guy, he was a professor of economics in Michigan. In 2015, he was like doing a check on them, and there was, I think, like $15 trillion unaccounted for. And like, say a budget was 10 billion, he would find deposits of 700 billion with no idea where that came from. Like we are so past the point of, if you even like the Fed has printed so much money, we have no idea. Like no idea. And they print, for an example, 17 million pennies a day.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not collecting 17 million pennies to out of circulation to print those.
And here's the other thing: I'll never understand how it was weird over the summer how there was like a change shortage. Like a lot of times I would go places and they were like, exact change only or debit. We have a coin shortage. I'm sitting here like, I was like, there's no way that we have a coin shortage throughout the United States. It makes absolutely no sense unless people are just hoarding their money. But it's just, it's scary to me. So like, I'm trying to figure out the end game with all this too. And for me, it goes to get cashless society. I feel like that's what is the ultimate goal, cashless society where every single transaction can be traced. I'm Italian. We don't really trust the banks. We like cash. We put cash under our beds. We have, we hide our resources. We keep it close to home because we don't trust anybody. So, I do. It does scare me when I see that we're printing money. It always does. It always has, especially when there's nothing to back it. And so here's another analogy. We had somebody on our show today that there's a really cool vinyl store in Memphis that is growing because vinyl's coming back. So it's a company called Memphis Record Pressing. So let me ask you guys this. So part of the reason why vinyl is so valuable is because of scarcity. And this works in anything. But I've got here, I could show you. See the records I have on my wall right now?
Yeah.
All right. So the one bottom left and bottom second to left are $150 record and a $450 record.
Damn, nice.
Why? It's not because the music's necessarily better. I may think it is. It's because the one that's worth $450, there's only like 90 copies in the
Wow.
entire United States of the
Right.
original press of that record. What happens if they start mass producing that record? It loses its value. You know, this can be applied across everything. If you're a baseball card collector, why is that Honus Wagner card worth more?
Mm.
Because there's only a couple of them in good condition.
Yeah.
So printing money, at the alarming rates that we are, is going to cause inflation. It's going to devalue our currency. And then, even things like raising the minimum wage is going to cause inflation. And I don't understand. It's a very simple economic philosophy that a lot of people don't seem to understand.
Well, and they also this because I just did episode on silver and precious metals, and the our market is just so manipulated. Like, so we know we're printing money. So in times like that, precious metals go up because inflation is happening, and because they play around with those futures and shorts and all that stuff that I don't really understand, they're able to maintain prices of whatever of all commodities, not just precious like soybeans or any commodity, and they make sure to keep those low so it doesn't look like, people get nervous, because then people get nervous, they go to the bank to get their money out and they realize, oh, I had $30,000 in here, but the bank only has 3,000 of that and they already gave it away. So
Right.
it's such a house of cards that I feel like they're purposely breaking it down, because I mean, I guess the government's that stupid, they are that stupid, but could they be that stupid to keep printing money and keep doing it more and more? Like, because at what point will it end? It has to, it has to.
I don't know when it's going to end, but I made this analogy too. I feel like words are currency too. So, when you've exhausted the word like racist, like imagine racist as a dollar bill, and every time you use the word, it's like printing another dollar. How many
Yeah.
times have you heard this word racist? It's like it's been printed and put into circulation so much that nobody even turns their head when they hear the word racist. Well, we need
Yeah.
a new form of currency because racist isn't working. What about white nationalist? What about, so now the new term is like white nationalist. Now that's the big one, because racist doesn't work anymore. So, words can be currency and they have value as well. And, we're seeing that happen, like with global warming that lost its value. I'm sorry. Global warming lost its value. So now what did they do? They changed the language to climate change, and the stock was rising with climate change. So you see artificial inflation with language as well, not just with
Ooh,
currency.
nice
Yeah.
metaphor.
Yeah.
That's true, dude. But yeah,
Yep.
it is scary. Like, and I try to remain positive about the future, and because there's nothing else we can do. That's like I always hear people talking like crazy talk on the internet, like, oh, I'm gonna make heads roll and things like that, and it's like, geez, dude, like, I don't know. It's just I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know, dude. I don't
The
know.
only thing that really scares me is when, we start seeing stuff like, the social media companies are going to start cracking down on domestic terrorism. That's the scary stuff, because we've always, spoke about how, social media is they're not what we think they are. They're not private companies. They're working in tandem with governments, and you're seeing it more and more as they say that they're going to fight anti-terrorism, but realistically they're only coming after one side. And so
Yeah.
speaking out about the jab is considered one of their anti-terrorist stances. It to me is extremely scary. So that's the one thing that kind of bothers me, is a little worrisome, is as far as ending up in a 1984 society where you can't question Big Brother. That's the only thing that kind of bothers me. But on the other hand, I drive out to the country and I realize that this is a very large plot of land we have here in the United States, and it's really going to take a lot. I feel like if it gets to a certain point, people are going to start pushing back, and they are. And especially with the second go around with the Delta variant, and I'm seeing it in Tennessee, people are not complying like the way they did last year.
Yeah,
like
that's a great
I am
point.
seeing parents just in droves coming and protesting and speaking out. I'm seeing nurses and doctors finally coming forward, because people are always like, trust the science. I always hate it when a nurse is like, as a healthcare specialist nurse, I'm, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm like, well, there's healthcare specialists and nurses and doctors that disagree with you. You don't speak for all the nurses, like if you're involved in like neonatal intensive care and you're speaking about immunology, like you're speaking outside your level of expertise. That would be like me talking about jazz music. Well, as a musician, I think jazz is blah, blah, blah. I don't know shit about jazz. So I'm not going to talk about jazz. I can tell you about what I know about. So I always hate the people that say, as a nurse, you got to be careful about the misinformation that's out there. Well, you've been trained on misinformation, sweetie. So it's like, so don't tell me, what I can and cannot talk about just because, you're a nurse for 40 hours a week. Cause I know a nurse down the street that I can call right now that can contradict everything you're saying.
Yeah. No, dude, it goes back to like brainwashing and who funds the science. It always agrees with who's funding it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that's a happy note. You're right. Not complying. And that's the only way to win this battle is that enough of us don't do what they ask us to do.
I trust in the American spirit. I really do. I think listen, there's too many guns in the hands of private citizens. I'm not saying I own any of them. They're all at the bottom of the lake in a freak boating accident. I'm just saying hypothetically. I trust in the U.S. military that if push came to shove, they would side with the citizens. I know a lot of trained people, who serve our country or in law enforcement that say, if unjust laws came around, I mean, think about it. Like what percentage of the U.S. military or even our police force, when push came to shove, would side with, an overbearing totalitarian government? And I say a very small amount. So because of that, I think we're okay. So that's why they're going after the First Amendment first, because once you go after the First Amendment, then you can kind of start taking everything else. So as long as we try to keep that going, then I think we'll be okay.
Well, Bob, I'm always honored you stop on the show. So I'm very thankful. Let everyone know where they can find you, but I'm sure they can. But anyway.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Bob's Lessons. And I got that name because it was originally, I was just going to put a bunch of guitar lessons up there. I'm not trying to teach anybody anything. It was just, I hate that handle, but at Bob's Lessons and also on Instagram. Those are really the two best places to find me. YouTube as well, Bob's Lessons. And, I'm on I've been on local radio for about 3 months now, and I'm really enjoying it. And here's the other thing I can tell you from getting involved in local radio is get involved locally. If you want to make change, and I'm seeing it, you have to get involved locally. You have to go to your county commissioners. You have to go to these meetings. You have to call them. You have to call your senators, call your congressmen, call your local mayors, start, not a literal fight, but that's where the fight is. It's locally. You can affect change in your community, and then it spreads. That's kind of the difference is that I'm noticing now is that parents and taxpayers are not getting involved enough locally. And if we do that, then it will kind of trickle up, I guess you could say, to everything else.
Dude, I think that's absolutely fair. So, dude, thanks so much again. I'm always honored. I always enjoy talking to you. And Bob, we'll talk soon, my friend.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man.
All right, dude.